Now, prior to the discovery of oil, agriculture has been the mainstay of the Nigerian economy and played a dominant role in the provision of adequate, nutritious food for its populace. However, the large-scale investments and development of the oil sector resulted in nosediving decline in agriculture production and subsequent increase in their vulnerability to food insecurity. According to data from the World Bank, 40% of food produced in Nigeria goes bad before getting to their final consumer, which is due to inadequate food preservation and the storage system leading to wastage and seasonal scarcity. Well, to address this menace, experts have the view that government at all levels and corporate investors must collaborate to mop up available crop, add value, and store adequately to arrest shortage in the future. Joining me to provide solutions as we look at this food security, wastage, and storage in Nigeria is the Managing Director of Babban Gona and Mr. KOLA MASHA. Mr. MASHA, good afternoon. It's very good to see you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, let's start this discussion with food pricing in Nigeria. Look at the consistent spike and elements fueling this surge, taking cues from last year and then your proposals of strategies, mechanisms to control the price of foods and likely forecast for 2022.
Well, I think we have unfortunately seen a significant rise in food prices with dramatic growth in food inflation over the last couple of years. I think fundamentally this is being driven by the fact that Nigeria's agricultural productivity is quite low. That is the yield that farmers are able to get per hectare that they farm, and this is driven primarily by the fact that the vast majority of farmers struggle first and foremost to access the debt that they need to access loans that they need to buy high quality seeds and fertilizers to be able to get high yields. They lack access to those products as well as the knowledge on how to use them effectively. And this leads, I think, our yields as a country for most products are typically around 20 to 25% of the level of equivalent yields in other developing markets.
Now, do you see Nigeria consolidating on rail transport for food transportation, especially as issues around security almost remain same, hence the creation of new food hubs? I'm really worried about the security thing and how it affects agriculture. What do you make of this?
So rail transport does potentially have a role to play in helping to reduce the costs of transporting our goods. I think the reality, though, is Nigeria, the vast majority of agricultural products in Nigeria are produced in northern Nigeria, and already they do benefit from reduced cost of transportation. If you look at the cost of moving goods from Lagos to Kano, the cost of moving the same quantity of goods from Kano to Lagos is sometimes as low as 50% to 25% less. So the key challenge we're going to face with rail transport is really that last mile. Oftentimes you'll find that shipping things short distances on a per metric ton basis tends to be actually much more expensive. I think if you look at other markets, and one key area where I do see tremendous opportunity if harnessed effectively is barge transport. Hands down, waterways, barge transport is the most cost-effective way to transport things due to its very low utilization of fuel.
Great stuff. We haven't necessarily put our best foot forward. That's when it comes to value addition at this time, especially around processing and food wastage and storage. Now how do we begin to change the narrative at the moment?
So these are critical areas of food wastage and storage. I think they are, however, I think a significant second or third tier problem when compared to productivity. Just to give you an example, right? If you have today, you're producing 1 kilogram of maize as an example. Let's say your wastage is 25%, so you lose about 250 grams. If you cut that in half, you save about 125 grams. But if you invest in increasing your productivity and you move your yield from one kilogram to 2 kilograms, you just added an additional 1,000 grams or 1 kilogram to the system. So it has a much higher impact when you focus on productivity versus efficiency gains such as storage and wastage. But yet those are critical challenges. I think to a certain degree, although they have to be, I think it's a question about when you make those investments. If you look at most other parts of the world, say the US as an example, or other key markets, first they focused in on productivity, got yields very high, and then what tends to happen when you do that is prices start to come down quite significantly. What happens at that point is the government then steps in to provide investments in storage, investments in price support mechanisms to help to ensure that prices are buoyed up to some minimal level that farmers are able to ensure that they're able to get a good return on investment. But that type of investment typically comes much later after a real focus on productivity enhancement.
Let's move to state governments, and of course there's a clear task ahead of them, but there is a blueprint to catalyze the prospects, or the blueprint to catalyze the prospects remains a hurdle. That is clear, because a lot is ahead of them, taking advantage of what they have, comparative advantages in their states, now. But we have pushed conversations around states producing crops and produce of comparative advantages, like I said earlier. In the case of blind spots, as well as, how do you see the role of public-private partnerships bringing fresh insights and roundtable discussions at this time?
So I firmly believe the role of public sector investments in agriculture should really focus on two key things. First is infrastructure, particularly rural road infrastructure. I think there are several studies that have demonstrated that there's a dramatic improvement in productivity with investments in rural road infrastructure. The reason for that is when you have bad roads, the farmer is effectively paying much higher prices for the fertilizers and seeds because it's much more expensive to get it in there, and there are fewer people selling it, so there tends to be monopolization of a monopoly set up, and prices are higher. And then when the farmer is trying to market their goods at the end of the season, they get a much lower farm gate price for that because of similar reasons, right? It's much more expensive to evacuate that product. There are fewer buyers in that locality, so they are able to pressure the farmers for lower prices. So the farmers' economics are significantly reduced. Now, if you are able to invest in rural roads, networks, you're able to dramatically increase the ability for a farmer to get access to the right inputs and sell their products at fair prices. The second area that government needs to play a role is to really catalyze investment, particularly private sector players bringing in debt capital into farming. The reality is agriculture is very capital intensive. In the U.S., every year the government, through providing some levels of guarantees, implied or explicit guarantees, unlocks nearly $300 billion a year in debt financing to American farmers. The reality, unfortunately, is that the Nigerian farmer is probably the most underfinanced part of the Nigerian economy today, despite the fact that they make up nearly 30% of GDP. I think most data shows that only about 3% of bank loans go into agriculture. And if you actually dissect that 3%, you'll find that most everything there is going to large processing entities and not actually to the small farmer. So infrastructure and catalyzing private sector debt into the sector. If the government focused on those two things while ensuring that there's availability of good quality fertilizer, seeds, and chemicals in the market, I believe we will see a much different Nigeria in the next few years.
Almost finally, I'm looking at agriculture technology. Many would argue that you need to make agriculture sexy, yes, for the young ones to be able to, you know, key into it. What's your reaction to this?
Well, I think it's often talked about. I think it's what, from our perspective, what we've seen with our work at Babban Gona, where today we've been able to grow and support tens of thousands of small farmers to more than double their income relative to the average farmer in Nigeria. The key to seeing young farmers come into the sector is being able to make it profitable for them. If you're able to ensure that they have access to the capital they need, the loans to buy the good quality fertilizers and seeds, they have access to those products, they know how to use it, farmers very quickly will be able to turn around their productivity and become quite profitable. And at that point, that's when you start seeing agriculture become a magnet for young farmers. Today, we're very proud of the fact that nearly 70% of the farmers that we support are youth, who traditionally might not have seen farming as a viable opportunity for them and their families.
And finally, let's talk about the role of research and creating more resistant crops and livestock, and of course, value addition. We keep talking about cocoa, and we take it out and bring it in as chocolates, just like our feel.
So I'm a very firm believer in value addition. I'm a very firm believer in ensuring that you're able to bring the right technology in. I think the truth of the matter is there's a lot of technology out there in agriculture that has not been commercialized yet. There's a tremendous amount of work being done that has been done over the last 2-3 decades by a vast majority of a vast number of very talented scientists. I think the reality is, if you look at countries that have become real powerhouses in value addition, agricultural processing, so on and so forth, one of the best examples is Thailand. What you will find is that it went through a few phases. First and foremost, Thailand in the 80s focused exclusively on two things. They increased their farmers' productivity by giving them debt, loans, and access to inputs. Simultaneously, they devalued their currency so that the Thai farmer was able to start exporting those raw commodities around the world and becoming very competitively. Now, what happened then is, because they had a dominance in production, then they attracted foreign direct investment, mostly from Japan, to start to forward integrate into value addition. Now, what the beauty of that system was that they actually were able to now take that even one step further and start to invest in even higher value manufacturing, to the point that today Thailand actually produces more cars than the United Kingdom. And I should note, has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the world at 0.7%. That's less than 1% unemployment.
Interesting conversation there. I must appreciate your time. I've been speaking to Managing Director of Babban Gona, Mr. KOLA MASHA. Thank you so much. I will keep a tab on you and always have you join us to speak around this very important sector, at this time where we look away from oil.
Wonderful. My pleasure. Have a lovely day.
All right, then.